Thanks for joining me on 13 Plus. My name is Cali Lichter, and this is On the Docket, a weekly recap of crime in court across the state of Michigan. Coming up this week, a drug bust which found, quote, terroristic levels of fentanyl in, breaking down the sentencing of a man who assaulted a woman after being out on parole for a criminal sexual conduct life sentence. These are all on the docket.
We're talking terroristic level of danger.
The Grand Rapids Police Department seized the largest amount of fentanyl in the Vice Unit's history this week. They seized 500 grams of fentanyl and 250 grams of heroin, which Police Chief Eric Winstrom and Deputy Chief Michael Maycroft say that amount of fentanyl is enough to kill 250,000 people. And that may not seem like a lot, but that's enough to kill almost every person in Grand Rapids and Granville combined. The man arrested in the case, Daryl Mitchell, is now facing a drug trafficking charge. I was there this week when GRPD announced the bust, calling it a terroristic level of fentanyl. This week, the Grand Rapids Police Department's Vice Unit had its largest fentanyl bust in department history, enough to kill the population of Grand Rapids and Granville combined. The 500 grams of fentanyl was seized during a narcotic search at an apartment in Granville. In a news conference Wednesday, GRPD says Daryl Mitchell is now charged with trafficking the fentanyl and around a quarter kilo of heroin.
Deputy Chief Maycroft said 250, the capability of just that small amount to kill 250,000 individuals. We're talking terroristic level of danger related to this.
Not only is ingesting fentanyl dangerous, but coming into contact with it is as well. Deputy Chief Mike Maycroft says Mitchell having the narcotic in the apartment building put several others at risk.
The danger of fentanyl being ingested or inhaled secondarily is highly dangerous. He also had a respirator in his apartment, so he knew also how dangerous this was.
GRPD says Mitchell was recently released from a 17-year federal prison stay where he was charged with cocaine trafficking. But heroin and cocaine, says Chief Eric Winstrom, is nothing compared to fentanyl.
But this is a game changer, fentanyl, and I have no doubt that this would have led to illegal sales of a deadly substance to numerous people in the West Michigan area. And we would have had, I can't tell you how many people would have died.
This bust for the department shows how the nationwide opioid epidemic is affecting Grand Rapids right here at home.
Drugs are not a victimless crime when someone's dealing drugs outside your neighborhood, driving violence. Drugs are not a victimless crime when a loved one overdoses on fentanyl.
The case is still under investigation by the Vice Unit. Even though many lives were saved by taking this fentanyl off the streets in West Michigan and around the country, many lives are unfortunately lost due to the narcotic. Through the Freedom of Information Act, 13 on Your Side asked the state for data from 6 counties in our area. And in all 6 counties, overdose deaths have risen. Our Micah Cho looks closer at those numbers.
You're doing better than many other states, and those overdose trends have really come down across all demographics.
Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian says while overdose deaths in West Michigan may still be concerning, there is continued hope in lowering those numbers.
In the last 2 years, we've really seen a very hopeful trend, and we've seen the number of overdose deaths come down, and we are now below the national average.
Still, overdose deaths across 6 West Michigan counties have nearly doubled from 1,535 in 2013 to 2,931 in 2023. The data from the 6 counties that 13 on Your Side requested through a Freedom Information Act request include Allegan, Barry, Kent, Muskegon, Ottawa, and Newaygo counties. While bigger in population than the rest, Kent County has seen some of the most overdose deaths, from 71 in 2013 to 111 in 2023, peaking at 130 deaths in 2017. According to Dr. Bagdasarian, Many of the overdoses can be attributed to street drugs and opioids, possibly laced with fentanyl.
We're seeing a lot of contamination with things like fentanyl, and we know that fentanyl can cause overdoses very rapidly. So we're seeing contamination with fentanyl not only in drugs that people are buying thinking that they are opioids, but we're also seeing fentanyl contamination in other drugs like cocaine.
With fentanyl making news both locally and nationally, Dr. Bagdasarian has a warning for those who are using drugs not prescribed by a doctor.
And that the risk of an overdose today in 2025 is much greater than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So I want to raise awareness to people so that they know that this is a problem.
Micah Cho, 13 on your side.
I spoke to a Holland family who lost their daughter in 2021. They say Mac thought she would never get a substance laced with fentanyl until she did. You can read that now on our website, 13onyourside.com. And this week in Muskegon, a man was charged after Muskegon police say he called in a false bomb threat to Trinity Hospital Muskegon on Friday, February 28th. Patrick Bassett was arrested in Norton Shores after investigators were able to trace the call back to him. But Bassett is no stranger to false bomb threats, court documents reveal. This isn't the first time he's been charged with calling in a false bomb threat.
A man is facing a felony charge after police say he made a false bomb threat to Trinity Health Muskegon. Muskegon police say Patrick Bassett called the police department Friday night saying there were multiple explosive devices in the hospital. But after a search by multiple agencies, they found no threat to the building.
Ultimately, in today's day and age, law enforcement is going to take any threat to any institution or any individual seriously. And thankfully, they have the technology and the sophistication to conduct investigations in a very swift and efficient manner.
Muskegon County Prosecutor J.D. Hilson says the quick response allowed officers to find Bassett in Norton Shores and take him into custody.
Now, the really important thing here is the fact that they moved quickly and efficiently, found the person that they were interested in, and ultimately we were able to make a charging decision very quickly.
Bassett is charged with false report of a felony. This isn't the first time he has allegedly called in a false bomb threat. Bassett pled guilty in federal court in 2012 for a bomb threat he made from Marquette, Michigan to a high school in New York. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Bassett left a voicemail for the school that said there was a bomb in the girls' locker room. At the time, the U.S. Attorney's Office says Bassett believed the daughter of an ex-girlfriend was attending the school. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. And a decade later, he was charged with calling in another false threat, this time to a hospital in Marquette in December 2022. He was charged with misdemeanor malicious use of telecommunications and felony false bomb threat. He pled guilty to the misdemeanor and the felony was dismissed. Bassett spent about 6 months in jail and 1 year on probation.
Bomb threats are not the only charges in Bassett's criminal history. Court documents obtained by 13 on Your Side say he was convicted of burglary in 1972 and 1976. He was convicted of felony larceny in 1978 and convicted of maintaining a drug house in 2020. These cases were all out of Delta County Circuit Court in the UP. And coming up after this short break, I'll take you into the case of Greg Dujardin, a man who is now serving a second, almost life sentence after assaulting a woman while out on parole for his original life sentence. That's on the docket next. Last week, a man who assaulted a woman while on parole for a life sentence was sentenced again to what prosecutors say is basically a life sentence, and let me break it down. Greg Dujardin is a West Michigan man who, up until May of last year, was serving a life sentence for assaulting women in the Grand Haven area. He started serving that life sentence in the late 80s, and you may say, isn't a life sentence supposed to be, well, for life? And you'd be somewhat correct. Here in Michigan, we have a lifer law, meaning some people convicted of life crimes like armed robbery or criminal sexual conduct like Dujardin are able to apply for parole after a certain number of years. And a parole board did just that. During sentencing, we learned that Dujardin did have stipulations of his most recent parole, like a GPS monitor, but the prosecutor, jury, and judge say that didn't stop him from committing the assault in September 2024. Before his 1989 conviction, Dujardin had also previously been convicted in 1981 in Ottawa County Circuit Court for receiving and concealing, and in 1986 for criminal sexual conduct in the second degree in the Grand Haven Circuit Court as well. In early September, court documents say a woman noticed she was being followed by a man after leaving a park in Grand Haven. At a stoplight on US 31, he hit her Jeep. Investigators go on to say the woman thought they would exchange information at a gas station, but when they did, investigators say Dujardin assaulted her. Authorities were able to find Dujardin in Muskegon. Which takes us to last week. A jury found Dujardin guilty of assaulting the woman at the gas station in September. And the question that I was asking was, what do the guidelines look like for a man who was found guilty of assaulting a woman while on parole for a life offense? As the prosecutor said during sentencing,
we are asking that the court abide by that and sentence the defendant to the Department of Corrections for that amount of time for 25 years. He's 61 years old today. That, by my math, would mean that he would be released when he's 86 years old or eligible for parole when he's 86 years old. And that's after he has some parole issues to deal with as well. My hope is that at 86 years old, the defendant is not in either a mental state of mind or physical state to commit any other offenses on any women in our community.
the prosecution believes that even if he were to get out on parole after the minimum sentence of 25 years, that's the same as a life sentence for Dujardin. During a sentencing, the judge usually hears a statement from the victim or relatives of the victim if they are no longer alive, and closing statements from both the defense and the prosecution. And then they read the actual sentence and may also say some thoughts of their own. The victim in this case, who we are keeping anonymous, spoke about how what Dujardin did to her will greatly impact her forever.
I've explained many times how this assault has made me even more aware of my surroundings and has made me uneasy whenever I'm in public or even home alone because I'm afraid I may be attacked unprovoked. As a result of this assault, I have had to seek therapy because I have been severely affected emotionally. Even with that being said, it's still so hard for me to talk about, so even this step is difficult. To know that this could have happened to someone completely defenseless had they been in the same place at the same time as me breaks my heart. I say all of this to make it clear that I believe Greg Dujardin should receive the maximum sentence related to my assault and how it has affected me. I do not believe a person like this should be trusted to live in society, because how can you live in society without upholding basic respect for those around you? This should never happen again to anyone, and I've gone through this process to ensure that it doesn't.
The prosecution pulled the transcript from Dujardin's sentencing in 1989 and read the words by the late Judge James Townsend, who sentenced him then.
But I don't think I can say it better than that judge did. He said that this defendant is very dangerous to women. He could be termed a predator. That separation from society of this defendant for a very long time is essential, and that there are no controls that can be used other than long-term confinement that would safeguard women from this defendant. Those were his words to this same defendant when he was sentenced back in September of 1989. And yet, here we are again.
She argued that anything less than a lengthy prison sentence would put the female population in Ottawa County in jeopardy.
He should not be released from prison. My hope is that with the 25-year sentence, mandatory minimum here, and with parole being in place and their ramifications for that violation, that he will not leave the Michigan Department of Corrections breathing.
But Dujardin's attorney painted a different picture of him. She said Dujardin was sentenced last when he was in his 20s, and that she and Dujardin believe he should have the opportunity to be a free man.
It's really sad sitting where I am in the fact that I have a luxury that nobody else in this room or watching this has had, which is getting to know Greg.
He says Dujardin recognizes most of his life has been spent in prison, and he has lost the support of friends and family over the years.
And I just would ask the court to consider him as a human and not as someone who has just done a couple of the offenses that we've talked about, but as someone who has spent decades now being in prison and in confinement. and hopes that the rest of his life he'll have the opportunity of at least having a chance to be free again.
But Judge John Holsing says Dujardin had his chance at parole, and the decisions the parole board made to let him back onto the streets over the years of criminal sexual assault convictions led them to this moment. Holsing says while on parole for a CSC conviction in 1986, he did not engage in mental health counseling, which led to victim number 2 a few years later, which got him locked up for life.
And that was a brutal assault, just an absolutely brutal assault, simply because he was not required to comply with the terms of parole.
The judge also mentioned worries from Dujardin's parole hearing in 2023, concerns with his hostility towards women, general social rejection, impulsivity, sex drive preoccupation, deviant sexual preferences, and cooperation with supervision, he says.
But apparently they also believe the defendant's representation when he said, and I quote, "I will do exactly as they say now," meaning the parole authorities, "and if I feel that I was going to reoffend, I would go to the police and ask to be locked up. I never want this to happen again. I understand what I did to the victims." These were subjective comments and obviously ridiculous, but apparently they were believed.
The judge also says Dujardin expressed on at least one occasion he was upset he had to go through the sex offender training or class again after his release on parole. During his trial, Holsing says there was prejudicial, not probative evidence that was not able to come out, and that was hundreds of images of unsuspecting females from beaches, public areas, and parks on Dujardin's phone.
In spite of all that, he was not called into account by the parole authorities, and now we have a third victim. So was this avoidable? Obviously, Mr. Dujardin is solely responsible for these acts, but there's a failure by the authorities as well, and it's inexcusable.
Judge sentenced him to 300 months to 900 months or 25 to 75 years in prison with 0 days credit. Now to some more cases out of Kent County. An ongoing case out of Wyoming on Tuesday. Police responded to a shooting near the Flowerland in Wyoming just after 4 p.m. Kent County Dispatch confirmed the shooting in the 800 block of 28th Street, but at this time, no further details about the shooting itself has been released. At the time of the incident, there was a large police presence in the apartment building across from Flowerland. Our 13 on Your Side crews noted clothes on the apartment building steps and saw an ambulance drive away with who they assumed to be the victim. Later Tuesday evening, Wyoming police confirmed the male victim sustained injuries that were non-life-threatening, and at this time, Wyoming police confirmed to us that law enforcement arrested a suspect on the northeast side of Grand Rapids Thursday, but they will not release their identity at this time, and we do not know when they will appear in court. The latest on a case we have been following closely here at 13 on Your Side. The 21-year-old Rockford man accused of setting a house on fire in Pennsylvania appeared in a Bucks County, PA court last week. Court documents say Harrison Jones traveled more than 700 miles to commit the arson, while 6 family members were inside. Our Jeremiah Brown went through the court documents which detail why Jones went to the Keystone State in the first place.
21-year-old Harrison Jones from Rockford is facing 20 charges for allegedly traveling more than 700 miles to set fire to a home in Bensalem Township, Pennsylvania. Police and firefighters say they responded to a house fire back on February 10th. They discovered the home engulfed in a blaze with 6 adults from the house suffering from burns and smoke inhalation. The 2 family dogs were killed. This video showing a person running towards a vehicle with smoke and then an explosion coming from the home. Police said the mother of the home woke up to strange noises and saw a man walking down the stairs. At first, she believed the man was her son, but found the kitchen and living room on fire. Police believe the man inside was Harrison Jones. The tags of the vehicle coming back to a home in Rockford. Acting on a search warrant on February 12th, the Kent County Sheriff's Office located the vehicle at the residence and found Jones with burns on his arms and lock-picking devices. While Jones claimed he was never in Pennsylvania, police in the state say they have footage of him at a local gas station before the fire. Court documents say a woman from Michigan had started a long-distance relationship with a 22-year-old man who lived at the home and made plans to meet in person for the first time. Court docs say detectives learned Jones and the woman had previously been in a relationship but remained friends, and that Jones was supposed to drive her to Bensalem. After his arrest, the Kent County Sheriff's Office said Jones waived his right to an extradition hearing and was taken to Pennsylvania, the judge denying him bond, and he is expected back in court later this month.
In Ottawa County, new charges have been filed against former Ravenna special education teacher Paul Masco. Last month, Masco was charged with having an intimate relationship with one of his students and possessing explicit images of her. But now the prosecution says the relationship went further. Investigators now say Masco and the student had sexual relations with each other on multiple occasions between October and January. Court documents say the incidents took place at Masco's home and at Grosse Park in Ottawa County. On top of the charges for possession of child pornography and using a computer to commit a crime, Masco is now charged with 4 counts of criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree. He's expected back in Grand Haven Court later this month. Coming up after this short break, 3 brothers on the east side of the state have been declared dead after their disappearance more than a decade ago. Plus, a man fleeing a police chase in a U-Haul truck. All of that is on the docket. On the east side of the state, 3 young brothers who have been missing for 15 years have officially been declared dead. Tanner, Alexander, and Andrew Skelton have been declared dead after a 3-day trial their mother advocated for, hoping to bring closure to their disappearances. The 3 brothers were spending Thanksgiving with their father, John Skelton, in 2010 when they disappeared. Investigators looked into the case for years, eventually finding John was hospitalized on Thanksgiving with an ankle injury, the children nowhere to be found. Inside John's home, investigators found broken glass and a noose hanging from the 2nd floor. They also found a note believed to be for the boy's mother, reading, quote, "You will hate me forever, and I know this." The boys' bodies were never found, and investigators have never fully been able to link John to their deaths, something their mother also hoped would be proven with this trial.
Alexander William Skelton, Andrew Ryan Skelton, and Tanner Lucas Skelton have been missing since November 26, 2010. Given their undisputed disappearance for over 14 years, the statutory presumption of death applies. The presentation of evidence, however, does not present clear and convincing evidence that John Skelton murdered these children.
John has only ever been convicted of unlawful imprisonment of the boys and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He has been permanently denied parole throughout his sentence and is scheduled to be released November 29th of this year. And in Branch County, an Indiana man who allegedly fled police in a U-Haul truck and led the chase into Michigan before barricading himself inside has been taken into custody. The incident began Tuesday in LaGrange County, Indiana, when a 48-year-old LaGrange man refused to stop for police while driving a U-Haul trailer. Police say the man had a felony warrant out for his arrest. The chase continued into St. Joseph County, where troopers deployed stop sticks. The man kept driving into Branch County until troopers deployed stop sticks a second time, causing the U-Haul to crash into the ditch. Police say the man then barricaded himself inside the truck. He allegedly had a long knife with him, and law enforcement negotiated it until he put the knife down. He was taken into custody without incident. The man was lodged at the Branch County Jail on charges of flee and elude and multiple resisting and obstructing charges. And finally, back to Kent County. Did you know it's illegal in the state to block the normal flow of street traffic on a highway? Well, our last suspects did not know that this was the case, disrupting morning traffic on M6 near Byron Center Wednesday morning. But instead of a ticket, Michigan State Police and Kent County Sheriff told them to rein it in because these were not suspects, nay, it was a group of horses. Take a look at this dash cam and body camera footage of law enforcement trying to corral the horses back in.
Yeah, I thought I had more.
Here's Jeremiah Brown once again with more on how 15 horses ended up on the highway.
When we plan our commutes, we often plan for traffic and the weather, but on Wednesday morning, horses made that list too.
But
But then when I drove my son to daycare down Wilson, I saw some horses actually run across the road, probably 10 or 15 of them.
The Kent County Sheriff's Office got a call around 7:30 in the morning for 15 horses that had gotten loose near Wilson and 76th Street.
We actually had horses from M6 in Wilson all the way down to M6 in Hannah Lake.
People sending in pictures and videos throughout the day. Deputies and state police wrangling 15 horses for over an hour. Body cam and dash cam video showing them galloping down the highway. Deputies then getting them to safety.
What we're hearing from the owner is that one of the smaller horses got one of the doors open somehow, which let all 15 of them out of this barn. And then they just started running from there.
It's a situation where Sergeant Scott Dietrich says they simply put safety first.
We want to make sure that those horses are not going to cause an accident, so we're shutting down roadways if needed. We're getting as many deputies out there as we can that are available to try to get these horses off the roadway and make sure they're out of the public's way. We just want to thank the community for all their help this morning. Obviously, we can't do it all alone, so huge help from MSP, our animal control officers, and the community.
While these equines were just horsing around, at the end of the day, they are home safe and sound.
I'm sure there's going to be some pictures floating around here for a while.
Reporting for 13 on Your Side, I'm Jeremiah Brown.
And that's all that's on the docket this week. Now, this isn't the only crime in court that's happening in the state of Michigan. You can find more on our website, 13onyourside.com. But for now, I'm Cali Lichter, and this has been What's on the Docket.